Hey friends, this is Dolynny TV. Glad to have you aboard this morning, this afternoon, whenever you're getting a chance to tune in. As the Edmonton Oilers tonight go for game number 6 against the LA Kings and a chance to close out the series yet again. It is absolutely insane to think what the Oilers have done games 3 through 6. Honestly, like you look at where we all were after game 2, and now you look at where we are after game 5. It's an incredible turnaround for the Oilers and an incredible turnaround from an end of the season which would have had a lot of us, myself included, shook with this Edmonton Oilers team. So let's discuss that in a little bit more here in the next little bit. But before we get there, if you are new to the channel, friends, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button. As I said, going into this playoffs, the coverage would be a little different this year, and it is no different than that as we continue forward. So what we got on tap is game 6 tonight. So we'll see what the Oilers pull out. What we also need to know is the Oilers have a chance to clinch the series tonight. So that's the other side of this. Is game 6 in and of itself is an achievement for an Oilers group that, well, you know, when they came in injured and stuff, like it was a little suspect. Even, you know, everybody would kind of admit Jake Wallman didn't look like he was 100% healthy to start the series. That is a guy nobody's talking about enough. He has gotten better and better and better by the game. I think going into game 5, he was leading the playoffs in plus minus, and he has just absolutely been dummying it out there for the Oilers alongside whoever we throw out at the time. But I know Bouchard spent a ton of time alongside him, and it's just really worked for the Edmonton Oilers acquiring Jake Wallman. So that's a benefit, that's a plus, and that's awesome to see. And then you have everything else that's kind of going on as well. The return of playoff Janmark again. I feel like there was justified doubt around Matthias Janmark coming into the playoffs. But again, this is a guy who the past, 3 years now just shows up and contributes in crunch time. And again, those guys will, in the NHL, typically get a little bit longer of a leash during the regular season than guys that are either unproven in the playoffs or unproven overall. So good for Janmark to, again, show up and get the job done here throughout series number 1, the first round. And hopefully that continues, because that's the other side to what our success was as the playoffs went on. I know the power play has been better after game 2. You know, the penalty kill has been better after game 2. But once it kind of gets down to crunch time in those final, I guess if you want to say 7 games in the Stanley Cup final, and you want to say, I don't know, 5 games after you get the feeling out process done in the conference final, after that, special teams kind of starts to diminish a little bit, and that's where the Oilers really have to be able to get going on the 5-on-5. And a guy like Matthias Janmark, guys that are kind of capable of contributing a little bit more than maybe they normally do, that's when they have to come in clutch and they really have to deliver. So hopefully that continues for Matthias Janmark as we move forward after tonight. Fingers crossed. Again, you know, if you've watched the channel, I was hoping for Kings in 5 at a little bit there. Again, anybody that couldn't see, I was in a little bit of a rough spot too. I don't know what to say, but yeah, no, I was hoping for Kings in 5, just kind of be done with what had been an exhausting Edmonton Oilers season so far. A team that just really struggled at every turn to be the elite team they were capable of. And you know what? After 2 games, it was looking like, you know what, I was right about this team, sitting there saying, you know, the injuries are too much. They just don't have what it takes to overcome a very good home team LA Kings squad this year. And then the Oilers poured it on at home, made it interesting, and then, you know, went back to LA and won a game. So now it's in their court, which has been a very favorable matchup the past, 8 years now, dating back to 2017. The Oilers have absolutely dummied clinching game scenarios. So hopefully for the Oilers, they can find a way again tonight to get that done, because you know what? If they win tonight, and this is the nice part, it's all shaken out nicely for me in the ball season, at least to start here on this icebreaker weekend up in Crossfield, is the fact that the Oilers shouldn't be playing a game until Monday. So if they play Monday, I have a game Tuesday as well. That works out perfect. Life's good. And you start to see how the summer comes together. So hopefully for the Oilers, again, like I said, tonight they carry forward what they've done right in the past 3 games. Really just sticking to their game plan, knowing they're never out of it, and knowing that they have the tools and capability to win a game at any point they choose. Again, if they would like to choose to win it in the first and second like they did in game 5, that would be absolutely awesome to see. So now, right, you're talking about the clinching, you're talking about clinching the series and getting that done. And really, it is just a testament, again, to the Oilers might not be as healthy as they look. They might not be as injured as they look, depending on how you want to flip that coin. But what has been one storyline here is the Oilers have stayed healthy in this series. That's something that, again, for anybody that was skeptical of this team down the stretch, they really struggled to do in the final 3 to 4 weeks of the season. It was every game, twice a game at the end of the regular season. 2 people, 3 players, whatever, were going down the tunnel every game. Somebody would miss the next game. It was piling up on this Oilers team. And they've come in, they've gotten healthier, right? And I think we talked about Jake Wallman, the trade deadline acquisition. Who we haven't talked about is Trent Frederick, who, as alongside Wallman, came into the series looking like, I'm not sure if he's looking really, really good or not. And then, Frederick's just gotten better and better. And I tell you, when Frederick finally finds a way to hit a net on an open look, he will score a goal here anytime soon. So for him as well, it's just another kind of get your feet wet in the playoffs and then away you go. And it's game by game, he's gotten healthier. Game by game, he's been feeling better, it looks like. And game by game, he's gotten just going. So for the Oilers to have as many options as they do, and that's what's different about this year's team versus last year's team. Everybody will say last year's team is better. What I'll tell you this year's team is better at is they have so many different options, thanks to having a healthy Evander Kane, thanks to having Trent Frederick, thanks to having Jake Wallman behind. Eventually, should the Oilers do what they did in the last 3 games and keep dumbing in the Stanley Cup playoffs, get Mattias Ekholm back. Well, now Mattias Ekholm comes in, you got Jake Wallman, and now you're kind of really going out there and mixing up the D lines, because there's a ton of possibilities. And I don't know if you're talking about Stetcher over Emberson, that's a conversation, but Stetcher over Klingberg, the way he's played in the 3 Oilers victories, that's a whole nother tough one to have. So I didn't think we'd be having that conversation either, but look at the playoff Oilers doing a whole different 180 from what was the regular season. Again, I don't even know if the Oilers had as many high-scoring games as they have had through 5 games in this series all year long. And that's, again, maybe to the testament that the Oilers were kind of maybe saving it a little bit. I know it was a sentiment that was put out there on a lot of not just podcasts like these, but like other situations like Oilers Now, like EST and stuff, where that discussion of maybe the Oilers aren't necessarily gearing up until later in the year, gearing up until playoffs. And it was just maybe not a serious discussion, but now it certainly looks like it was a serious thought in that Oilers locker room. So it's nice to see from an Oilers fan perspective that the hardships that this team appeared to face, the hardships that we had to endure as fans this year, watching a team that looked subpar compared to last year, it looks like, at least in the past 3 games, at least going into Game 6, a clinching scenario, they have flipped the script on that and become the team that we all were angry at times this year they weren't. And that's where, again, I keep getting day in, day out, and I'm starting to get concerned about it because I don't think it's legit. But I get that you're so negative on this team. You're so negative. Why are you negative all the time? Because we all know, honestly, if you're being positive about this team through the regular season, you're trying to get exactly where we all are now. And then where we are now is the fact that this team is the team we thought they were, that they could be, that they should be. And the problem I was so negative and upset with this team all season long is they just simply never showed a true glimpse, a true real sign that they were the team that we thought they were coming into the season, right? That we thought coming into this season, yeah, although different, although maybe older, although maybe slower, they were going to be able to get this done because they had the experience, they had the big guns that have done this several times over now. Connor and Leon know what it takes to win. Of course, before you win, you have to lose. Losing Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final with Connor and Leon, and then having Leon sign that big extension, having the faith that the goaltending is just going to be the same. So, you know what? Despite losing by a goal in the Stanley Cup Final, that wasn't really the end-all, be-all for why the Oilers lost. There's tons of positives coming into the season, right? And then the Oilers delivered for much of the year. There was really never two or three, maybe a maximum of two stretches where the Oilers were truly dominant. The Oilers were winning games, yes, but they were never dominant. And that's kind of what's different about watching that game 5 against LA on, what would that have been, on Tuesday, is the Oilers were dominant in the true Oilers playoff fashion that they can be. And again, you'd expect to have seen that all season long, given that it was a season where we're going to go win the Stanley Cup again. And you never saw that. That's, again, what led to me being so critical of this team, so upset with this team, is it's just, come on, guys, let's go. I know you're better than this. That's why I'm upset. I know you can do better. And then, right, when you all of a sudden get injured and you're all beat up, and it's like, well, now just because I know you can do better, you don't have the pieces to do better. And how are you going to do better against a strong home cooking LA Kings squad? So the factors were stacking up. You're playing LA for the 4th time. They've got home ice. It didn't look like a ripe situation for the picking for the Oilers. And after 2 games, like I said earlier, it just didn't appear that was the case either. But what happened after that is the Oilers went home and just found a way. And that's kind of always been the Oilers' story here in the McDavid and Draisaitl playoff era. I would not call 2017 part of that. That was a whole lifetime ago. And Draisaitl and McDavid, I don't even really think they remember the lessons there too much, because it's so far removed from their team that they run now, right? They were big major factors on that team, but there were a bunch of different personalities that might also had control of the room at that point too. Whereas this, McDavid and Draisaitl fully since the Winnipeg series way back when. And, it's just incredible to see the fact that, despite the different factors this year, despite the injury issues, despite all that, they came through, they fought through it, and they came up with the performance that now has anyone, and I will tell you, anyone that was in my boat, anyone that was sitting here saying, I just don't see how this Oilers squad, given everything we've seen up to game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs here in 2025, can actually do it this year because of injuries, inconsistent performance, goaltending, bad defense, terrible offensive finishing, whatever you want to say. And anybody that was saying that, I doubt, and that's why I'm saying what I'm saying right now, I doubt they're saying it right now. Because you have watched the Oilers win 2 games, even up the series, and then this is going to sound maybe funny as an Oilers fan who's been sitting here panicking all year about this Oilers team. When we were down to the final 3 minutes, I think it was, 3 minutes and change, when LA pulled their goaltender in game number 5, and they got zone possession, they started working it around, and the Oilers, here's what I would normally say, they were hanging on for dear life, but it simply did not feel like that. It did not look like that. The Oilers were in the lanes, blocking shots, they were controlling the play to the outside, they were really just calm, cool, collected, despite facing a 1-goal lead and facing a situation where the LA Kings were looking to tie it on home ice and possibly win to go up 3-2. It did not look like that at all. Phased the Oilers. It at all was a thought that the Oilers were concerned about. And the Oilers really, the poise in their defensive play in that final 3 minutes up to icing the game with the empty netter, it was a weird, real fan sensation to be sitting in the bar there. Maybe it was because the atmosphere was a little bit quieter on a Tuesday night in Airdrie. Again, not like we're in the hot spot of Edmonton where maybe the atmosphere would be a little bit different, but it was kind of the weirdest thing I've ever experienced in the playoffs out in a live setting, is where you're just almost certain the Oilers have it, and there's nothing else I'm worried about. It was just one of those situations where, yeah, LA can try it, but good luck to them. They really don't have this. This game's the Oilers. They've had it wrapped up for the past little bit, and we're just going to finish this thing off. And that's exactly what the Edmonton Oilers did in that game. So it was, again, like I'm saying, anybody that was sitting here saying what I was saying at the start of the series or in the between parts of the regular season and the playoffs versus now, Nobody's saying what we were saying earlier. So that is nice to see. But again, that comes with a regained trust based on the Oilers being the team from game one of the regular season, from game one of the preseason this year, that we thought they could be all along. And that's what's really been enjoyable about the past 3 games is the Oilers are once again the team that they should have been from puck drop in 24-25. So now, good time for it, peaking at the right time. They always talk about that in the playoffs. But one thing I do want to talk about as well before we wrap up here in this elongated edition, like I said, nice to have some time off today, I guess. But basically, one thing I do want to mention is Jim Hiller. He's kind of also been a turn in this series and kind of a maybe a lightning rod to some effect for LA Kings fans that are unhappy. They're down 3-2. I don't know. I'm speaking out of turn maybe there. I don't really follow LA Kings fans, but he's been a guy who, again, has made some questionable decisions in this series. The player management with the bench as the game goes on, cutting guys out of the rotation. That happens in the playoffs every year by different coaches, whatever. But the fact that an LA Kings team that's as strong as they were in the regular season feels that they have to do that to protect against an Oilers team that couldn't defend, couldn't do anything at all through the first 2 games. And then all of a sudden, you start shortening your bench, you start cutting players from the rotation, and the Oilers storm back. It just doesn't make sense there. But that challenge on the Evander Kane goal, that seems to me, and I will tell you as somebody who sat through every single game this series outside of a little bit of an internet issue and a snowstorm down here in southern Alberta, I believe in game 1. Basically, that was the change. That was the flip everything on a dime. Evander Kane scoring the goal and it being upheld on review. The Oilers scoring a few seconds later after that. It just seems like everything shifted from there on out. And while maybe not the best decision from Jim Hiller, I can't blame him. Again, Evander Kane standing in the paint pushing at your goalie. That's a fair challenge to ask for. Whether it comes up your way or not is a whole nother argument. But what I really do like about that is it seems like, from an Oilers fan perspective, and that's why I say I like this, is Jim Hiller from that moment on has just continued to make worse and worse decisions. If you, as an Oilers fan, were watching Game 3 and something that contributed to what I was talking about with the end of Game 5 there, if you watch Game 5, what contributed to the end of Game 5? Man, I've been talking too long, 18 minutes now. But what contributed to the end of Game 5, that feeling of poise, calm, and everything I'm talking about, is really the Oilers in that third period were just handing the Kings kind of a defeat. They were just going about their business, not casually, very seriously, but very, like I said, poised would be the word. And then LA started using Adrian Kempe as a defenseman. And now when you're down to 4 defensemen in your rotation by the start of the third period, as Jim Hiller has done much of the series since the first few games, what happens is now you're down to 3 defensemen and Adrian Kempe running around loose, getting into the action and stuff from the back end. And it just, again, talking about Jim Hiller's decision making, that just seems absolute. I get that Kempe is an incredible player. That's one thing that's always made the LA Kings series important here for the Oilers, is the development of the next wave of talent in LA, and Kempe is that next wave of talent. But it's just funny to see a coach that, thought maybe after Game 2 he had this in the bag, is now running one of his best forwards on defense, scrambling just to try and break through a team that they were bending at every single seam. The Oilers were giving up an odd man rush every 3 minutes, it seemed, through games 1 and 2. And then you all of a sudden add Adrian Kempe by Game 5 to the defense because Jim Hiller just can't figure out or fathom what has happened. It just seems incredible to me that that is where we're at. And now Game 6, what that awaits on home ice for the Edmonton Oilers. And I'll tell you, after having the defeats in Games 1 and 2 in LA, home ice and the atmosphere and everything, not just for a guy like me or you or everybody sitting there watching, but for the Oilers, what it means after those first 2 defeats to have won 3 straight now and have a chance to clinch on home ice in front of 18,000 plus in Rogers Place that are just going to go absolutely bananas when that final horn blows, La Bamba rains down, and the Oilers have advanced to the second round for fourth year in a row, I think, at this point. Absolutely awesome. But the whole atmosphere around Rogers Place, the city of Edmonton, everything, honestly, this series victory, again, the LA series last year wasn't that magnificent. The series against Dallas, I would even say, yeah, it was a crazy time. But again, I would say the two biggest kind of moments in the playoffs last year, for me personally, were Vancouver and Florida. So, this is going to kind of rival those two as compared to Dallas. I get that Dallas, we were going to the Stanley Cup final and all that, but that's why that was important. Not beating Dallas, not the victory itself. It was the fact we're going to the Stanley Cup final. Yes, maybe two in the same, but I differentiate a bit there. Is the fact that this one feels like a victory should the Oilers wrap it up tonight. That's the thing that I really want to harp home on, is this one is a victory for the Edmonton Oilers. So, the LA series last year felt like a given. The Dallas series wasn't a victory because we beat Dallas. It was a victory because we were going to the Stanley Cup final. But beating LA this year is a victory for an Oilers team, again, like I said, that had dealt with injuries, inconsistent performance, goaltending issues, defense issues, offensive struggles, everything you can name for this Oilers team that was supposed to be, on paper at least, just as good as last year's squad going into the season. Struggled at the start through the preseason, the early regular season, couldn't really find its way at times, gives up home ice to the LA Kings, loses the first two on home ice to the LA Kings, or first two in LA on their home ice, and comes back, roars back, down 2-0, up 3-2 with a chance to clinch today. It is a good feeling, friends. Enjoy it. Enjoy the hell out of it. We'll get going hopefully later tonight. I think I'm actually down here tonight for it, so we'll see what happens. As always, though, I will catch you in the next one.